Southeastern Idaho, yeah.
Yeah. And there was around a little less than 3,000 people there when I grew up there in the 80s, 90s. You would have been there like what, 70s, 80s?
80s, yeah, mostly 70s, 80s, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, you would have been like as far as like a little one, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because yeah. So and I don't know about you, I don't recall ever really learning or hearing or knowing anyone that I knew to be trans. What
Yeah,
do
no,
you have an experience with that?
no, I don't have any experience with that at all. It just wasn't part of, I don't know, our community, our lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. There just wasn't an opportunity to meet anybody or experience something like that or
Mhm.
different, something different, I guess it would be.
Yeah, well, and I think if it was definitely not something that we were aware of.
Hmm.
I kind of knowing the history as well. You know, many trans, not all trans people look trans, or
Right?
even are known as being trans. You know, I'm a person who's transitioned later in life, and I look, you know, because I already kind of testosterone did a number on me, and you know, so like I look like a trans person, I think, but like other folks might not. And I think back in the day, back in the 70s, 80s, I think it was even more important for, or felt more important for people to pass as somebody who's not trans, to be seen as somebody who's not trans for safety reasons. um there
Do you think that all trans people have a certain look to them?
No, and I think that's part of that, kind of speaks to some of the narrative too. I think there was a time that you had to kind of, in some ways, you had to assimilate and look like everybody else, you know, and this is like beyond just a trans thing. I mean, I think
Mhm.
women have felt this way, men have felt this way, and then folks who are trans, they then needed to kind of try to fit into another box. And I think in some ways you tried to do everything you could to try to just be seen as everybody else, so that it didn't draw, you know, unwanted attention to you. And I that and so for some trans people, some trans women and trans men, they are and they live as men and women, as in a very binary, not like a very binary way. You know, they want to be seen as a woman. They don't want to be seen as ever being a trans person. You know,
Mhm.
have other trans folks that are more like, I will, like, even if I, like, at some point in time, if I ever looked and sounded and could, like, somebody would like be in conversation with me and never think that I was assigned male at birth, I think I would still always identify as a trans person. For me, I just feel like it speaks to the breadth of my experience. But some folks have a different experience with gender and a different understanding, and a different goal. With kind of like what being trans means to them. And I think that's what these conversations are good about, because there's this kind of like, there's only one way to be trans, or, you know, maybe two because there's two genders or whatever, is kind of like an assumption. But there's so much of more to us. And I think a lot of folks at times, some trans folks have had to kind of, I think, sometimes go further in their transition because they feel like they have to, or that's the only way, when in some ways they might be more um, along the spectrum of the gender, rather than from one binary male identity to a binary female identity. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, well, kind of. So what's the goal then? I don't understand the goal.
I mean, I think the goal is for any of us is just to be able to live our life authentically, to be able to find a way that we can exist in the world that feels good to us, that feels true and honest to us, um, in whatever way that looks, you know? And so I think that's the ultimate goal. I don't think that some people might have more physical goals of how they want to look, or how they, you know, how they want to present. And for other folks, it's maybe something else. But I think at the end of the day, from my perspective, I just want to be able to feel comfortable and good in my body and in my life, you know. And I I didn't have much a relationship with my body. I don't even think maybe a healthy relationship with my body, um, until I started transitioning. Like, and I think that was because there was some dissidence, if you will, in being in a body that I didn't want to be in, and not necessarily like the body, but like presenting in the way that I didn't feel comfortable being seen as a man. Um, it didn't feel like it fit me, and therefore I didn't really want to like own it, if that makes sense. And so I think transitioning for me is being able to actually be a more integrated whole person instead of just living in my mind or living in my heart. I'm now living in my body as well. And I think that's part of, I think what an experience is for all of us, I think as humans, is to be able to be more, live more wholly, like be able to um, bring all of what God gave us, our mind, our body, our spirit, our heart, or however way you want to label those sorts of things, but to be able to be present, to honor, to respect, to see the sacredness and the divinity in all parts of ourself. And sometimes, there's certain things about ourselves, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, maybe behaviors that we do that don't always feel they're not maybe I want to say they're not right, and like in a, you know what I mean? Like they don't feel right or they don't feel correct, or I don't like using right or wrong or correct or incorrect, but they just don't seem to fit us. And so sometimes we have to change our behaviors, or we have to change certain things because we want to have a different experience in life, because maybe we're having negative consequences, or we're being unkind, or we're being, all these sorts of things. We work, I think, to try to be better with our whole selves.
So, what is your goal for those of us who aren't trans to see in your personal journey that you just described?
I don't think, I mean, and it's really, I don't know how much of it is about like other people. I think there's an element, I think there's a big part of actually my transness that other people, what they think and how they treat me matters to me, but it
Okay.
only matters to me because it impacts my ability to live my life, So like personally, I'm not transitioning for anyone. Do
Right.
you know what?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm like, so why is it so important that we all see? I don't understand the visibility part. We have a whole day for us to see visibility. I don't understand what that means exactly, and how, what the goal is. What are you wanting us to see? I see you as a person, as a human being, someone that God created, someone who has a potential and a purpose in this life. So, what is it I
But
need to
you
see on this
right,
particular day of visibility?
but you also know me to be a trans person.
But I feel like that with other people. I see people in my supermarket that, to me, may be trans. I don't know for sure.
Right,
And I don't look at them any differently. They're at the supermarket, just like I'm
right.
at the supermarket. We're all buying groceries. I just don't
Yeah,
understand if there's something I'm supposed to see that I'm not seeing. Because for me, that person is on their own journey to discover who they believe they want to be,
yeah,
or who they don't want to be. And unless they ask my opinion about it, I'm not sure that I need to see or even have an opinion or an expression about it at all.
right.
So I'm confused about
Which
the purpose behind some of the things that I see, or that I'm being told I need to look at, or things I need to experience, or things I need to expose myself to, because I'm like, I don't know that I need to.
Yeah, and
Um,
I mean, I wouldn't say that you need to. I think you spoke very eloquently to, I think, the reason for visibility. And because I think you have a unique experience where you've been able to get to know me, and we've been able, you know what I mean? Like, and you might not see me, like you're able to see me as more than just being a trans person, which ultimately that's what we want. But mostly, like prior to my transition and stuff, I had very negative ideas of what it meant to be trans. I was told that it was all about our sexuality, that we were all like, having to live and work on the streets. We were getting murdered, and there was violence toward us. We were abominations to God. Those are all very like not great things. And those were the only messages. Those were the only things I was told about trans people. If I saw them in movies, they were playing prostitutes, or they were, victims of domestic violence, or they weren't just like the main character that was like, I don't know, like falling in love, or, like part of a rom-com, or were just like, part of any sort of narrative. There's only been one kind of narrative about us. And I think that's the thing that's why it's important, is so that people can see there are so many ways to be trans. And at the end of the day, being trans is just a part of us. But when some people look at us, that's all they see. Like you don't, right? That's great. Ultimately, to some degree, that's what we want. We want to be able to still, like, I still want you to know and understand that I'm trans, but I want to be seen beyond that. And I want to be able to live my life beyond that. I want to be able to leave my house without feeling like my transness is going to cause me to be attacked or pointed at or not get the job, or, like all these sorts of things. But I think people have to.
Would you want to be in any of those situations? And would you want to really work at a job where nobody wanted you to be there? I mean, I wouldn't want to work at a job where no one wanted me to be there.
Yeah,
For whatever reason, because I love Jesus, because I'm too old, because I eat the wrong foods, or I don't want to work in a place like that. And I certainly, I guess people have their opinions on the street, but I would hope that being on the street, there are other people out there who have a moral compass that would say, check that person that was maybe even being confrontational with you, especially now. I can see back in the day maybe, but now I think there's a lot of shifts that we have to consider.
It's even worse.
Pardon?
In some ways it feels worse now. Like in my lifetime right now, like specifically in this moment, I am more afraid of being out in public now, because people are being unkind to us, and they are saying things to us, that I didn't think I was experiencing before. And it's still not like what it was, but being able to, like, we don't always, especially if you think about, like, I live in Idaho, there's only a certain amount of jobs I can get. It ain't like I can go to a different grocery store. I can't go to a different gas station, or I can't, I can try to walk on a different street, but it's just like, my world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's why visibility is so important. So people can see that, like, we're just people, just like everybody else. Like you said, we're just people, just trying to live our lives in a way that feels good to us, not harm other people in the same way that any other person, hopefully, is, trying to live their life. And so, but we don't always get an opportunity to do that, because people sexualize us. They when they look at us, the only thing they see is our sexuality. I don't look at you and automatically think about your sex life. You get to go live your life, and your sex, because you are not seen as a sexual being, you can teach in schools, and you can, you know what I mean? Like, queer people are automatically seen as only our sexuality. And there's nothing else about us, and we're not allowed to be seen as more than that. And that's really what a lot about visibility is to see that there's more to us. Yes, our sexuality is a part of our life, just like it is anybody else's, but there is more to us. We are fathers and parents and preachers and, doctors and lawyers. And sometimes we are sex workers, and we are, like all these sorts of things that all people are, but because of media and everything else, there's only certain things, or even just because of location, a lot of us aren't really exposed to people different from ourselves, which is why I think visibility is so important. So we can get to the point where we don't have to get hung up on the fact that somebody's trans.
Yeah, I get that. My experience has been that the world is full of all different kinds of people, including some of the ones that you've described. But I find, and this is just my opinion, so don't blow me up too bad, anybody. I think that some of that perception of sexuality comes from how we present ourselves. If I'm a 21-year-old in a really short skirt showing my breasts and hardly scantily clad with stilettos on and going down the street, people are going to look at that person in a sexual way. If I'm going down in a business suit and hopefully not scantily dressed, that there may be some attraction there, but I don't think I think the perception would be different. There was a time when that wasn't the case. So I think that some of these things, not all these things, and not all people, and I know that there are always those extremes out there. So I get that. But I think on the norm, from what I see and from the spaces that I live and move around in, I feel like a lot of that attention sometimes is brought on themselves. And I don't know what they put on the news so much anymore. I mean, when I see a sex worker, they don't always say they're transgender. The same sex workers that aren't transgender get some of the same horrible attention.
Right.
So I feel like you have a valid point, and I think there's some things that we need to be aware of in respect to one another, to just as people. Not there should be no titles. All these titles that we try to put on ourselves and on other people, I feel like is a bigger challenge than any of these other things. And for us to be able to be on our own pursuit, to pursue our own purpose, to pursue our own life and the desires that we have for our life, if people would just stop giving us a box to try and fit us in based on their own opinion, I think it would make things much easier.
Yeah, I feel
Because as
that
much
too.
as we're different, I'm sorry, I just want to finish my thought.
No, go ahead.
And
Sorry.
as much as we're different, and as much as we have totally different lifestyles and totally different life experiences, we have a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm.
As far as how people, treat us, how people are said, I'm obviously older than you. I get a different response from people than I did 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They treat me different. The fact that I'm public, that I love Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I get a lot of kickback from that on both sides of the wall. So that to me is people are trying to shove me in a box
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make me what, and I get a lot of criticism for that. And you know what? It just comes with it. Here's the thing again, just like with what I was saying to you, those are people trying to fit me into what their opinion of I should be. Same thing as if I have to have my hair perfect and my nails perfect and my whatever perfect. Who's to say how I need to present myself? Maybe I feel just fine in my own skin, and maybe
Yeah.
I feel like I put myself together. So who are you to say? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to see me. I'm not going to tell them how to see me, because if they're seeing me in a particular way, I believe that there's a reason behind it. And it's not always about me. I think most of the time it's about them. My bigger worry for you personally, because I love you and because I care about you, what happens to you and anybody, is that I'm worried more about the fear that you live in, because the fear is no place to be. And I think in the spiritual space, fear should be close to non-existence. Where's your faith at? What do you believe in? So for me, I think maybe it's different than you. So I don't walk in fear when people come against me and spew hatred at me, and they do. It's not something I talk about. It's not something I want everyone to know. It's not something I want everyone to protect me from. I've chosen this life. I'm going to live this life. But here's the thing: I'm going to live my life. And you
Mm-hmm.
can have your opinion. You cannot have your opinion. I'm going to wear what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to go where I want. And if I can't get a job over here, I'm going to get a job over here,
Right.
and I'm just going to live my life. So my bigger concern for you and for others who may be stuck in this situation is the fear that they allow themselves to live under. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I want to see. I want to see lifted off. I want to see that go away so that people can just live their lives, all people, no matter where they're coming from, no matter how they want to present themselves.
Right.
So I apologize. Thank you for letting me have my long-winded say, and I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, no, I think it's great what you said, and I think that that's why like a lot of the visibility is important. Like yeah, it would be great to not have fear, but the reality of it is that there are elements that I do have to be mindful of.
I think there's a difference, though, honey, from being mindful to being fearful. To me, fear is a choice. The minute I fear something, I give it power over me, and I don't want anyone give anyone any power over me except God. And so I don't fear things. If something happens, then I'm just going to deal with it. If I lose my life today, my hope is that I'm going straight to heaven. So I don't even fear that. Do I want to get beat up or embarrassed in a public platform where it's going to be on the news? No, I don't want that to happen. But I'm going to survive, and I'm not going to let that fear dictate the rest of my life and steal from me all those moments that I can have. But it's not easy.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
don't.
you're right. You need to be mindful. You're not going to go in a dark alley after dark and be
Right.
silly. But
sometimes it doesn't even have to be at dark, but
I know.
I think that's, and it's hard to, I think it's hard to really speak to it because like I understand what you're saying, and that's what, like, I think that's the goal. But like there is a constant, I mean, we just had laws passed to keep us from existing, like people are coming at us, you know what I mean, in very like mean and hurtful ways that can lead to our death. Very like mental, emotional, and spiritual. It'd be great to, I don't feel like, and this, I feel like this is like, so, and part of it is that some of us don't get to have a God like yours that
What do you mean?
I'm
Nobody gets to.
I'm saying
Go
it.
ahead. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish your thought. I apologize.
I'm trying to say it from like a point of view, like if I'm speaking to like my past experience with church and everything else, I was told that I was an abomination. I'm still being told that by a lot of the church. So it's like, why would I even try to like, and the reality of it is that even though God is in our lives and maybe we're not afraid, does not mean that violence isn't going to happen to us, and does not mean
Right.
that we're not going to be able to still get jobs or be able to make income in a way that, like allows us to live a life like everyone else, So, and that's not to say that life isn't difficult for a lot of people, regardless of their gender. So, and I think that's part of it, is to be able to get to a place where we don't have, like, somebody being trans is not a big deal. Like, people are trans, like, okay, so, like, move on. That would be great to be at that point, not at a point where you don't know that. I think it's just like, if like you are a Christian and you want people to understand that there's like, that you don't want to be in a box with your Christianity, so to speak. But I think you still want people to see you as a Christian and to like speak to you or be in relationship with you as if you were a Christian.
I don't have that criteria.
No.
My hope is that my life itself and how I live my life lets people know that I love Jesus. And I don't expect people that love Jesus or don't love Jesus to treat me with gloves on.
Right.
I want to be
There's still an
around.
element that you identify with being a Christian. That's part of your identity.
I do. And so as a Christian, I try to perceive and experience people from a Christ-like kind of view. I don't require them to come into my way of living or thinking or expressing themselves. I want to make sure that I encounter everybody in a way that I believe Jesus would want me to encounter them, not by telling them how to live their life, not by telling them what to do, not by condemning them. Those are things, but I don't have a criteria for engaging with people or the kind of people that I want to be around. Um, and I hope people see that I'm a Christian, but if they don't, I'm not going to chase them down and make them see me as a Christian, because that's not up to me.
Yeah. We're like, relationally though, I think there's a thing.
So I have a beautiful friend that I love very much. She knows that I'm a Christian, and she's very much not a Christian. And when I try to talk to her when she's having a rough day to encourage her, she's like, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
And you know what? We're still friends. We still love each other. We still spend a lot of time together, and we respect one another. So, and I try to, and I tell her, I don't know what advice to give you except for that I know from being a Christian. Do you want to hear it? So I've adjusted, and sometimes she says yes, and sometimes she says no.
Yeah.
I just want to, I don't know. And I'm sorry, I told you I probably wasn't going to talk very much today. And here I am, like, blah, 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 all over the place. But
No,
I just want people to be able to be who they are. And I don't want to I don't want to be told, just like you don't want to be told how to live my life, what things I should consider, how I should see other people. Um, I want to have those. Now, I don't subscribe to hate. I don't subscribe to any of that. I think it's horrifying. But I think for us to think that it only exists in certain pockets of society is wrong. And if I think that any of us are less likely to get robbed or beaten up or raped on the street, that's wrong. That's not true. It depends on some of those places where you go. So
it
yeah,
is true, because when people see you as less valuable than other people or less value than themselves, and they feel like they can do things to you. They dehumanize you. So I think there are people who are more vulnerable than other people.
You're right. I'll stand corrected, because I see women being trafficked all the time. I see children being trafficked all the time. I hear about that. But what I'm saying is, it's not just limited to a certain sect of people all the time.
Agreed.
There are horrible, horrifying, scary, evil people out there. And no matter what we do, I'm not sure I want them to see me, because the minute they see me, now I have to interact with them.
Right.
I would rather I want to stay steadfast. If I have an encounter with them, I hope that it goes the way God wants it to go. But my bigger, I don't want people living in fear. Because when we live in fear, you're right, honey, it steals from us, from every area of our life, not just in who we are as a person or how we present ourselves. It steals from our spirit. It steals from our existence. It robs us from the very joy of having relationships with other people. And that shouldn't be. And the physical body, to me, is different than a spiritual body. A physical body, it's a physical body. When it's gone, it's gone. But I wouldn't want someone to rob my inner self, my spirit, my soul, that very, because that to me is a bigger deal than my body.
Yeah, but I mean, but our body is a part of us.
Sure it is, and it would hurt like heck to have something horrible happen to it. But I hear the stories of people who have had horrible things happen to their body, that have been in that process, have had a mind transformation that has brought so much peace and joy to their life.
Right.
And I don't pursue that, and I'm not telling people to pursue that, because that would be ridiculous. But just don't live in fear of it.
Right.
And we're all created uniquely and wonderfully and beautifully, and we need to be able to live uniquely, wonderfully, and beautifully. But understanding at the same time that a lot of people don't want to allow us that beauty, and a lot of times it's because they don't feel beautiful themselves. And so they don't know how any way to build themselves up but to take other people down. But to live in that fear of it, that's what gives them the real control.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. How do we live beyond the fear?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where courage comes in, and most of us, we do that every day just by existing. I hate when people say you're so brave, and it's like, I don't want to be brave. I just want to live my life, just like all of us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want my existence to have to be brave. And you've seen me, and you know that I've experienced utter joy and excitement about my body changing and this transition, and doing, like, you've seen very positive things that I'm doing for myself. Like, I'm having a better experience with my body. And I know you've seen me have a harder time with people outside of me, whether it's my family, whether it's, just being in the world. Like, I know that you've had a very, I think, very special spot in my life to be able to see that. You've been able to see the variation of it all, the good, the bad, the not so great, whatever.
That's what we do when we do life together.
Yeah. When I think for me, it took me 40 years to get to a place where I could start to live into this. You know what I mean? And the reason why I didn't is because I didn't know it was possible. And I was in environments that weren't good for it. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't able to get to a place. And now that I am, it's like I just kind of imagine what it would have been like if I, growing up in church, if I would have known that there were people like me, so that I didn't like go through church just feeling like I don't fit here, I don't belong here. There's something about me that's not right. That's not right for church. That's not right for God. And then to go out into the world with relationships and being at home, there's just so many things where, like, I was trying to find this part of myself that was an important piece of me that I wasn't able to just express. You know what I mean? It was something that I had to kind of hide, and many times I hid it from myself even. And I just couldn't imagine how much different my life would have been if I would have known that God could love me sooner. If you know what I mean? Like, if if it didn't cause rifts with my family, if it didn't lead to violence, if it didn't, all these sorts of things. So for me, that's what's important about visibility, and what I want to be seen as the trans person who's like living their best life, who's happy, joyous, and free, because I do believe that that's what God wants for me, and that's what God wants
But
for
I
all of
don't,
us.
but I don't understand why you want other people to. That's my challenge, and I'm probably just overthinking it. But I don't understand the visibility. Why is it so important that other people see how you're living your life? That's the thing, cause I feel like I don't. There's some things I don't want people to see about me living my life, quite
Right.
frankly. So I don't understand the whole visit. That's my thing. What's the goal here? Um,
It's maybe it's not about maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's about other trans people seeing themselves,
so you want to be a role model,
seeing their I don't know. Please no.
but so, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that
No,
pointed
but
directly at you. I hope you know
it
that. I
took
just
me it took me 40 years. It took me leaving my hometown. It took me leaving my family. It took me to multiple cities and lots of not so great experiences to get to where I am now, and it would have been so great to not have to leave home in order to dot dot dot, or to all these sorts of things, which happens. Like, that happens for all of us for a number of reasons. I personally want to be a part of hopefully alleviating pain and struggle and harm that I experienced. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to experience the same harm that, like, I want to try to make my harm matter, and hopefully not something that somebody else is going to have to deal with. It's a way of kind of transforming the
Mm-hmm.
pain and the harm and the violence in a more positive way, versus just, like transmitting that violence or that hurt or that harm, but actually working to try to heal some of that. There is a comment question. I'm not sure. Dare, I think. Why should we be secretive? Anyone should be able to express their gender and be happy with their relationship without being afraid, without being accused of things or subject to violence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very well said. And I think that's the challenge. It's not about, and I don't think you're saying that we need to like be secretive about it, or it's not in the sense of like, why do people have to know, but like, why is, like, I think the challenge on both of us is, why is it an issue?
Right. Why,
Right?
why is it an issue?
But it is. And
Yeah.
that's the problem for us who are on the tail end of that. It's like, how do we get past this? How can we just live our lives? And sometimes we have to just live our lives by, you know what I mean? Like, and like we have to live. Yeah. And I think that's part of the challenge is we don't get to just live our lives oftentimes in these places. And so that's why it's such a big deal. Mark says, growing up as a gay man, I felt alone in the world until I knew there were other people just like me. I think that's what the visibility means. Yeah,
So
very
it
well.
would be more of a finding a camaraderie. It's not geared for people like me. It's geared for people who are looking for someone like them.
Yes.
So if
Yeah.
I had a Christian day of visibility, it would
Hmm.
be me promoting and looking for other Christians to actually engage and know that
Right.
it's okay to be a Christian. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
exactly. I mean, that's very much the similar way. Yeah. I mean, I feel, yeah. And sometimes I feel like that's church every Sunday, or, you know what I mean? Like, to me, I feel like Christians have a lot of opportunity for that. And there might be some, I think there obviously, there is some like one, say, narrative that is starting to be kind of widely known,
What's that?
as what it means to be a Christian. And so, yeah, it's important for people like yourself and other Christians to be able to speak to a different experience, an experience that allows more space, right, for people to be Christian in. Yeah,
Well,
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Christian, and I think you and I had this conversation, means Christ-like. And according to my Bible, God is love. Christ is love. So I just need to be loving and kind, and I need to let God work out all the rest of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, once you are telling me that you're a Christian and you love Jesus and you're following the teachings of Jesus Christ, then it's okay for me to hold you accountable for that. And because I would want you to hold me accountable for that, because like
Mm-hmm.
I said before, I don't want to have to tell people that I love Jesus. I want my life to just represent that no matter where I go and no matter who I'm engaging with. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the goal. So just to clarify, I wanted to make sure that no one was like, I don't know. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I feel like there's a certain level of intimacy and commitment to being in community with one another.
Oh, there sure is. Just like family.
Mm-hmm.
I would never want to be separated from my family. And I was for a long time for lots of different reasons. I think people separate from their family for a lot of things that steals from them, because
Mm-hmm.
I believe my family was stolen me, and not because they chose, because I chose. I walked away, and I decided that I wasn't going to engage, or I allowed myself to get so busy chasing after my own life that I forgot about the people that gave me life and who helped influence my life as I was growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that rebuilding process a little bit hard.
Right.
But I desire it, and I have decided that I'm going to pursue it, and at whatever cost it is to me. And if that means I have to be humble, if that means I have to do a few things differently, then I'm going to do that,
Right.
because I love my family, and they are not worth losing for whatever I feel like I'm going to gain personally. And so that's my pursuit, and it's taken me a long time to get here. But like I shared last time, that I'm praying for them, and I'm not going to stop engaging. So,
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think if we're thinking about visibility within us in this
mhm.
podcast, there's a reason why we decided to do it, and there's a reason why we decided to put ourselves out in this way, and that's because I think for me is I want people to know that it's possible for people like you and I to be in relationship with one another and
Yes,
not tolerate one another, not just like, hey, at the family reunion or
yeah,
like, but actually like really
we love
be
each other. Yeah,
caring, loving, like relationship with one another, being able to bring our fears and our anxieties and our joys and our everything,
yes.
and not letting my transness or your Christianity or
Christianness. Christianness. Is that a word? Christianness?
yeah, Christianness, like get in the way because of our own doing and others. It has created separation
Hmm.
with us. There has been the belief or the understanding that we cannot coexist in a meaningful way. Um, I believe that, like you said, I believe that we're all here, everyone, to be in loving relationship with one another. And that's, I think, a exciting challenge. I think, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah. That's my desire every day when I get up and I have my time with in prayer. I ask the Lord to give me wisdom on how to walk, that He would give me eyes to see people, that He would give me ears to hear people, and the wisdom of His word to respond to them in a loving, kind, and edifying way.
yeah.
So that's my goal every single day, whoever God puts in my path. So some
Well,
days I'm more successful than others, but
yeah, and I think a big part of our life too has been able to bring with what our struggle or our challenge or whatever we're
mhm,
going through in life with one another. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Um,
absolutely.
and I think that's all that trans visibility is about too. It's just this idea of us being able to 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 be that in front of other people.
Yeah,
Like to be able to like to that it be okay to people be able to even ask, like, I don't know, just that it doesn't have to be something that you have to hide or that you have to keep from people in general. Not necessarily everybody has to know your stuff, but some of this stuff isn't like, it's little stuff, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
people, yeah, so and I think it's I love I love that we had this conversation today, and I'm always
Are we out of time already?
yeah. You know, and you know, I had this thought of like, you know, we were going to kind of talk about like trans over the lifespan, and I think that might be like, for me, that was something that I was kind of reflecting on this weekend, was when did I first see trans people? What did I think about trans people? And I know, or I feel at this point in my life, that because I didn't see trans people, because the trans people that I saw or were told about, whether it was in movies or narratives or whatever, they were seen as without God. They were seen as abominations. They were, you know, all these sorts of things. I tried so hard for so long to not own that part of myself, because I believed all this other stuff, and I didn't know I could be a trans person and love God and have a conservative Christian aunt who loves me and shows up for me in amazing ways. And, you know, and all these sorts of things all at once, because I had never been shown or told that those things can exist together, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for the time that we have now. I'm sad for the time that we missed, but I don't dwell there. I just looking ahead for what God has for us.
Right. Because that's all we can do. And I just hope that people younger than me get to have a less painful or difficult, you know what I mean? I just don't want people to have to go through the same stuff I have to go through. And I have no power in that. Right. But I feel like I want to do my best to hopefully alleviate some, you know, provide some comfort, hope, strength to people going through stuff. And
I feel like we both want to live our best life in a way that other people can learn from it and grow from it, and maybe be spared some of the heartache of it, right?
Yeah, and I think, and my understanding is that to some degree, that's how we transform our deficits into assets. Yeah. We can make our struggle or our differences matter by hopefully helping alleviate somebody else's comfort through theirs.
Yeah.
Dare says, representation is so important. I started transition at 47. I didn't know we existed throughout history. And then Dare says, thank you to both of us. So
thank you so much for watching and listening in and participating in the conversation today. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining us. And Tina, thank you for showing up today in the way that you did and asking the questions, even if you might have felt, I don't know.
Like I was doing all the talking?
No, I mean, but I think, sometimes it's really easy to want to just show up and be like, okay, yay, we're like trans visibility. And you're like, but why? And, and I think those are the questions that a lot of people have. And, and so I think it was great that you were able to put voice to.
Well, thank you. I just really want to understand. And all the homework I did, I didn't feel like I understood well. So I appreciate that you were patient with me and allowed me to speak what I wanted to say and articulate what I was feeling and answer my questions, even if you thought they were silly. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I didn't think they were silly. At times I didn't know how to answer because it was, because it's thought provoking for me as well. But I think there are so many folks who will listen to this podcast that will either come from my end or your end or somewhere in between, who will be able to relate because we've been able to kind of like have these conversations. And the Spiritual Artist podcast says, sending you love and support.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were trying to cut me off I think 7 minutes ago, so I should probably let you sign off. So
right. And Dare says, give that cat some treats.
Yeah, no, sorry about that, but hey.
It's okay. It's totally okay. See y'all next week.
Splintered Grace podcast is brought to you by a queer chaplain. Follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at A Queer Chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Steven Sandnoff, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Tina.